guys, welcome to episode 2 of Let's Talk. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you so much for all of the feedback that I've been getting from the first episode of Let's Talk about eating disorders. It means a lot to my sister. It means a lot to me to be able to be welcomed into a space to have these open and honest and blunt conversations, especially when, as she stated and as I stated in the last episode, it's so hard to have these conversations sometimes with your Christian girl peers or in your youth groups. I mean, how she was talking about, I couldn't talk about specific topics in my youth group. I went through the exact same thing in my old youth group. It wasn't, I try to bring things up. Like, I want to talk about sex. Like, I want to talk about certain things because I don't know where I'm going with these things. I don't know what my mind is on these things. Like, help me figure out where I should be leaning towards, because I think we struggle sometimes to explain why things are bad. And when you're in a state of wanting to do those things, like let's say you're wanting to have sex or you're wanting to do drugs or wanting to drink alcohol, just because the Bible tells me so, or oh, because of we just don't do that, it's not a good enough reason in those times. And so to be able to take the time to hear stories of like, I did go down this path, like I think you can learn so much from women who are like, I did make this mistake. I did decide to go down this path, and here's what happened. And God pulled me through, but man, it kind of sucked to be in that trench. I mean, hearing her story, especially like I grew up with her, and hearing some of the things that I didn't know that she had been through, or hearing some of the stories that she had said, really helped give me a perspective on her as my sister, but also on her as a fellow young woman. Excuse me, sorry. She is 19 years old now. And so, and I'm only 23 years old, so we are almost peer young women together. And so hearing her and seeing her and just being proud of her as a big sister, it really meant a lot. And I hope that that story and those things meant a lot to you as well. I talk with my hands a lot, so be prepared for that. I also noticed in the last episode that I say like the word like a lot. It's something I'm going to work on because wow, holy cow. I was listening to myself and editing myself over and over again, and it was overwhelming. Okay, so episode 2 is going to be heavy because it's just me this time. And the last episode was heavy, obviously, but this is a little bit heavier for me because this is from my own experience and this is my own testimony. And so today's episode, Let's Talk, episode 2. Today we are going to talk about sexual assault. This is going to be a hard one for me. I've talked to a lot of people about this. I've talked to my own sister about this. I've talked to my friends. I considered writing a book for a long time, thinking that, God doesn't put you through things so that you just live through it and never learn from it. You have to have a testimony. Like that was kind of my thing. Like I need to write a book. I need to write a story. I need to share my experience with other women and other young women, primarily because at that time I felt extremely alone. I felt like all of my other friends were having sex, and so I felt that pressure to also have sex so that I could be a part of something, so that I could be a part of my group of friends, so that I could relate to them. Because something that I've learned over the years is when you put your self-worth in anything but your identity in Jesus, it will fail you every time, because the things of this world and the people are all sinful. Like they make mistakes as well. As you're making mistakes, these people make mistakes. So when I'm sitting here telling myself I need to do things because my friends are doing them, or I need to do things because it can't be that bad because nothing happened to my friend when she did it, I am putting my identity in something that's not Jesus. And so I just kind of wanted to say that from the beginning, that so I'm going to kind of rewind and I'm just going to share with you this story. All of the names are going to be changed of the people that I knew because, that's me sharing someone else's name and putting their name to it, and that's not fair of me. And it's also going to distract from the the point of it. I don't want to put names and faces on things when the whole point of it is my testimony that that Jesus is allowing me to be here to share with you today. And so we're going to start from the beginning. I mean, obvious content warning because of this is going to be an honest conversation, young women and moms and grandmas and moms who may be watching this with their daughters or may want to or are thinking of sharing this with your daughters. This is a honest and open conversation. I'm not here to gossip. I'm not here to be crass and to speak about things in a funny or blunt way. I'm here to just share with you my story, but within that story there are explicit warnings and explicit there is explicit content that is spoken about. So just, as a warning, be prepared for that. Okay. Let's start from here. I was 17 years old. I was working my first job at Target. There was a boy there. We'll call him Joe. Joe was significantly older than me. I was 17. He was in his 20s. I know that. I want to say 21 or 22. And I'd never been kissed before yet. I had not even held hands. I had had crushes. Like, I used to do a homeschool, high school co-op, which I hated, but that's besides the point. And I had had crushes before. There were times where I was friends with somebody and they ended up dating my crush. There were times where I would tell them I liked them and they would friend zone me extremely hard. So my love life was nothing to be looked at. I had had kind of a boyfriend when I was 14. He was 16 years old, but we didn't work out. And that was kind of my first opening to explicit behavior from a man. He was very crude with me. He would discuss um, shoving me into closets to grope me and to have sex with me. And I'm only 14 years old. And my parents knew I had a crush on him, but they did not know the extent of any of this. They kind of knew we were a thing, but we weren't really a thing. It was kind of like, oh, she has a little crush. And they didn't really know I also was not allowed to have contact with him. I wasn't allowed to text boys at the time. And so all of these conversations were obviously kept a secret from my parents. But he would discuss wanting to grope me. He would ask me very crude and inappropriate questions. And eventually, when I wouldn't do any of these things with him, things just kind of ended, honestly. Um, so fast forward to 17 years old. Like I said, I'm working at Target. I meet Joe. A lot of girls have a crush on Joe, and I ended up quitting Target because I hated it. It was literally one of the worst jobs I've ever had. And Joe kind of texted me, he hit me up, and he was asking me if I wanted to go out with him. I had never been on a date in my life. And at this time, all of my friends were about a year older than me. And so they were kind of getting into these experiences. A lot of them had already kissed boys, a lot of them had been planning on having, sex with their boyfriends. And I was the only one that had never done anything with a boy. And so a lot of the times they would tease me about that. A lot of the times they would, make fun of me, but not in a mean way. It was more, oh, I'm your friend and I'm kind of gesturing with you and I'm having fun with you. But it was me. I mean, I internalized that as I'm acting like such a kid. I don't know why I'm holding in all of these, feelings. Why am I not going out and kissing boys like they are? And so when Joe asked me out, we went to the movies and he was my first kiss in the local mall parking lot here in Iowa, and that was that. I mean, there had been one kiss when I did a musical called Hairspray. I was Tracy, the main character, and I kissed a boy in that, but he was gay. So that doesn't count. Okay. Don't ask me about that. Don't comment about that. Just, it was for the play, and he was gay. Fast forward, move on. Don't ask me. And so, yeah. So Joe was my first kiss. Joe and I never really went anywhere. He asked me to kind of show up to his apartment one night to hang out. I did. He wanted to have sex with me, and I was 17. He was in his 20s. I was not ready, and I told him no, and he kicked me out. He asked me to leave because I wouldn't have sex with him, and that was that. And Joe and we might have spoken like a couple times, but that was kind of it. Fast forward, I am now close to being 18 years old, and I am working on a show with a local theater company here in Iowa. I was the assistant director, which was my first time kind of being on the directorial team, which was really exciting. And I was really close with the cast. I met one of my best friends, Lauren. That's her actual name. I'll use her name. That I met my best friend Lauren at the time. You know, we hit it off super fast. She's one of my closest friends. I love her so much. And I was really close with the whole cast. We'd hang out, we'd, go to a lot of places. And at the time, I was really close with a boy named Tanner. He was also one of my close friends. Him and I would hang out a lot. We were really close. He was a great guy, really great friend. And he brought me to a play at his high school, another high school here in Des Moines. And that is where I met, and we will name him Braden. We sat in the same row. It was very short and simple. It was, "Hi, I'm Braden. Hi, I'm Anna. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Sit and watch the play, and I'll probably never see Braden ever again." Soon after, Braden followed me on Instagram, which I thought was kind of weird. I was homeschooled, so I didn't have this whole public school or going to school experience where you meet some guy and he would end up following you or end up talking to you. I met homeschool guys, and 9 times out of 10, they're extremely socially awkward. And so conversation doesn't happen that easily, or it's like 2 dates and they're talking about how many kids you want, I mean, let's just be real. And so he followed me on Instagram, didn't say anything. So I'm just like, oh, maybe a new friend. He ends up coming to the opening night of the show that I am directing because he knows my friend Tanner, and he knows somebody else that was in the cast. And it just so happens that opening night was the same day as my 18th birthday. And he DM'd me on Instagram, Braden, and he wished me a happy birthday. Which at the time I'm wondering, Braden, how do you even know when my birthday is? Nobody's posted about it. But okay. And I say thank you, and that's kind of that. And he comes to the show, and I see him kind of looking at me from across the room, and I'm kind of looking at him. He's a cute guy, and so I'm thinking maybe this will go somewhere. I kind of asked Tanner, is Braden say anything about me? Tanner has no idea, so I'm like, I don't even know. And so after that night, I mean, he wished me happy birthday. I said thanks, and that was kind of it. Nothing happened for I think it was a week or two that I didn't hear from him. Long story short, he ends up DMing me on Instagram. We start talking. He tells me he thinks I'm cute. I tell him I think he's cute. And so, he wants to hang out. Funny enough, I had just gotten my tonsils taken out. So I was a wreck and a mess. And this cute guy is asking me to go on a date with him. And I'm sitting here like, oh, I am dreadful and I'm talking like I can't talk. I have my tonsils taken out. So I end up postponing. I'm like, let me heal first. Let me get better first. And so we just start having conversation back and forth. We're Snapchatting a lot. We're talking a lot, etc. And yeah, and the conversations start to get pretty sexual. He went to public school. I did not go to public school, and so he starts bringing up sexual stuff, asking me what my sexual history is. And to which I obviously tell him I've never had sex before. I'm a virgin, and that he liked that because of the fact that he had control over the situation. Um, and he made that known. He liked the fact that I wasn't sexually inexperienced, so that he could have control over me and over my body because I didn't know what I was doing. And I didn't have women in my life to explain to me, or women in my life that I felt comfortable with, and women in my life to explain to me, you know, what sex truly was. I mean, obviously I knew what it was. I'm 18 years old, but what that really meant. And I'm not even talking in an explicit way, I'm not asking for details, but he's bringing things up or talking about things and I have no idea. And so to him, he appreciates that and likes that because he's now able to take control over me. So I heal, my tonsils heal, and we end up going to the movies, the same mall that I had my first kiss with Joe at. And we meet, and he had discussed wanting to do, sexually explicit things with me. And I mean, I'm nervous. And it's not the nervous where you're excited nervous. It's the nervous like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm doing something wrong right now. And I don't feel comfortable with this. But, I had such low self worth that in my mind, if I had to do this to keep someone or get them to like me, then this is what I have to do. And it wasn't until later in life that I realized that the right person wouldn't push you to do things that go against your morals. They wouldn't push you to do things that you're not ready for or comfortable with. It wasn't until I met my husband Steven, and when we first met, I told him I want to take things slow, and he never put up an argument. He was there and he said, "Okay, I'll wait for you and I'm going to be on your timeline." And I had never experienced that. And and so when he's like, "I want to do this to you, I want to do this to you, I want to do this to you," and I'm telling him, "Well, I've never done those things before," or, "Well, I don't know if I'm ready." "Oh, I'll be there for you. It'll be okay because I'll guide you through it." It wasn't, "Oh, you talk to me or let's talk about it." It was always, "I'll show you what to do." And because going back to that, he liked the control that my inexperience gave him over me. And so that's also like a message to moms too, if there are moms or grandmas listening. Sometimes inexperience leads to and ending up doing those things anyways, but in a manner to which you shouldn't be doing them because you don't know what you're doing. And so after the movie, we went back to his car, and we didn't go all the way, but there were definitely things that I had never done before and wasn't ready to do. And we're in the back of a car. It's not, and I hate to be corny. Like, this isn't corny. I know there are going to be girls who hear me say what I'm about to say and they're going to be like, "That's so corny," but it's not. It wasn't in a wedding bed. That's not corny. It's not corny to wait. It's actually really sweet, and it's something I wish I had done. And it wasn't, you're married to the love of your life and now you're going to be doing this stuff. It was in the back of a car. And so we didn't go all the way. I told him I wasn't ready. But that was enough. I did enough to basically keep him interested in me. And I think in that moment, something locked in my brain where you know, I equated giving up my morals to having to make relationship sacrifices. Like, oh, I'm making a sacrifice so that this person, will be happy. You have to make sacrifices in relationships. Like I just said, when you find the right person, they will not ask you to change your morals or who you are as a person. There's a difference between, "Oh, my partner drinks almond milk and I like 2%," and, "Oh, I'm not ready to have sex before marriage and now I'm being forced to. And now this person is making me feel like I'm forced to." So after that, we kept hanging out, but it was always at night and it was always a secret. My parents kind of knew a little bit about Braden. I don't think they ever met, but his parents knew nothing about me. I was never introduced to his parents. I never met them, and he told me that he never told them. about me and that we were kind of under wraps, but that I was his girlfriend. You know, we had hung out a few more times, done a few more stuff, and at this point I'm his girlfriend. Um, then one night he takes me out to dinner. We go to IHOP, you know, classic. We're 18 years old, you know, late night eating at IHOP. And, you know, he's been kind of calling me his girlfriend, so I've just assumed. And he tells me that before he can, you know, officially date me, he has something to tell me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, of course. I mean, at this point I've convinced myself that I want to be with him. And he tells me that previously he had been at another high school and he had gotten expelled for sexually assaulting another girl. You know, like that's yeah, I have a crush on this person. He's just told me that. But he assures me that it was false claims from her. That he had fallen asleep and his hand slipped and it didn't mean to happen, blah blah blah. And you know, this is a pinnacle moment for me. I can listen to what some people call butterflies, but I call little red flag flies in my belly. I can listen to them telling me, leave, 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 and don't ever look back. Or I can forgive him for past mistakes and move forward with him. And I take a breath and I tell him, you know what? We've all made mistakes. I forgive you. Let's move forward from this and let's, you know, be together. I want to date you. I just, you know, I'm just even thinking about that. Like, what was I thinking? Because I don't know, it's so hard to remember what I was thinking because I think that, ladies, my self worth was so low that I had to compromise. So I've already compromised my morals, and this man has told me, this boy has told me he has, you know, been accused of sexual assault before, but oh, it was just a mistake. I fell asleep and blah, 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 blah. And I don't ask any questions. I don't ask to talk about it. I don't ask to talk through it. I just forgive him and we move on. You know, and going back to what I said, the right man will never ask you to compromise what you believe in or compromise, you know, the red flags that you have ever. And so we moved on. And at that point, he wanted to have sex with me. And everything in me was telling me, do not do it. You know, what happened to wanting to wait? You know, what happened to wanting to give? You know, you always hear that as a little girl or like as a young woman in youth groups, giving your gift. Yeah, that's something I heard a lot. I don't know, maybe there's different terminology for you. I always heard give your gift away. You don't want to give that gift that Jesus gave you away. Okay. And again, it's like, let's just be real. Like, let's just be honest. You hear give that gift, and honestly, it sounds dumb. It kind of sounds dumb. If you are a young woman and you are watching your friends have sex around you and enjoy it, and someone tells you don't give your gift away, you're not going to be sitting there like, I better keep my gift. All of my friends are having sex and they're enjoying it, and their boyfriends love them for it. So why shouldn't I have a boyfriend that loves me for it? Why can't I feel loved right now? That's really the mindset, genuinely. You know, and especially because in church they don't talk about the repercussions like I'm talking about with you right now and like I'm going to get to. They just say don't give your gift away, or Jesus says don't have, you know, sex before marriage, and that's kind of that. Nobody comes in, at least to me, nobody came in and shared their testimony of why. Why? What happened? What are the psychological and physical damages? Um, so moving forward. He wanted to have sex. I didn't want to. You know, but I needed to keep him. I wanted to keep him because I liked being able to tell people that somebody liked me, that somebody found me attractive. I was now a part of my friends who had boys that were, you know, that liked them. So late one night, he asked me to pull up on his street and kind of pull a few houses down and park and wait for the lights to turn off in his house because I his parents didn't know about me. I he would make me, I'd park a few houses down across the street. I'd park a few houses down across the street. I would come up, I would sneak around his house to the back. And in the back, by the back door was like one of those in-ground windows. And I would crawl through, I would literally turn and I'd like scoot and crawl into it. And to me, it's it's astonishing now. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how could my self-worth be that low that I was letting myself and allowing myself to crawl through a window to be with somebody who couldn't even introduce me to his parents? But that sometimes in the moment feels fun. It feels I'm being rebellious. My parents didn't know where I was. I told them I was going to the movies. I was going to a late night movie. I was going to a late night movie. We never went to a late night movie ever. And in that moment, it's fun. You're having fun. You think, I'm listening to, hot girl music and I'm driving and I'm taking my girl revenge and all this, but it's not fun because I never left thinking, wow, I feel so much better about myself because I didn't. Because I didn't. Because I'm not going home to a husband every day who loves me. I'm leaving my boyfriend's basement window after being talked and forced into having sex with him. That's not fun. That's not enjoyable. I gained no confidence from that. I honestly left feeling ashamed of myself. And that was in this story, this story I'm telling you was one of the biggest reasons why I ended up self-harming because I hated myself for it and I internalized that. And instead of bringing my shame and my guilt to God, I brought it out against my own body. So I snuck through the window and I remember telling him I don't feel 100% right about this. And this has stuck this what he said to me has stuck with me for years. For years. I will never forget this as long as I live. He looked at me and he said, "Anna, this is what people who love each other do. This is what people who love each other do." And so in that moment, am do I not love him? Will he not love me if I don't have sex with him? Will he leave me? What will he tell other people that I didn't love him? Of course I love him. And so that night we had sex. And when it was over, I sat there and I bawled my eyes out. I bawled. And I cried the whole 20-minute drive home and I cried in my bed. I was ashamed and I felt guilty, but more so it was the way that it wasn't even at the time, it wasn't even the way he had spoken to me. It wasn't even the way that had gone down. It was the way that I had compromised something that I had held dear my whole life. My whole life, I had wanted to wait until I was married to have sex with my husband and to enjoy that moment with him, and he was gone in like 5 minutes, and I could never get it back. I think that's something too. Don't give your gift away. Don't give your gift away. You know, don't have sex before you're married because when you get married, you have to look your husband in the eye and tell him that you've already had sex with somebody, and that is the worst. I think that's the worst. And I'm not shaming you. I'm not guilting you. If you are that woman who said, "Okay, well, thanks a lot, Anna. I've already done it." So have I, and he was not the last. You know, I'm not shaming you. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you what I felt and that I get. Maybe you just did that and I get what you're feeling. Maybe you think about that. It took me probably up until and through the time when I met my husband to even move past a lot of this stuff. And so maybe you're working through things. I hear you. And it's okay to feel that those things. It's okay to be ashamed and to feel guilty. but don't wallow in that. That was what I did. And so I allowed myself to go back for more and to go back for more and to go back for more and to be treated like crap and to be treated like crap and to be treated like crap because I didn't take the experience that I went through and then go, okay, time to, what does the Bible say? Time to move forward. I just wallowed in it and thought, you know what? I've already screwed myself over, so I might as well, keep going. Because how could Jesus ever forgive what I just did? And so that's my that's my advice to you. Don't wallow in that. Fix it. And by fix it, I don't mean that things will be better overnight. I'm telling you to reflect on that. Like, just like we talked about in episode 1, how, Zoe said she's not better. I'm not better, but I'm taking the steps that I need to get better. That's what I'm telling you. Don't wallow. And and just because you made a mistake or just because that happened doesn't mean that you're irredeemable. You know, you can be redeemed from that. It doesn't mean that, oh, I've already, messed up my life. I might as well just keep messing it up. That's not what that means. And before I started recording tonight, it honestly reminded me of the story of the woman at the well a lot. And if you don't know that, look that story up because that is something that again, why not in a youth group talk about that? You know, ladies, if you've already been sexually impure, listen to this. Listen to how Jesus brought her back. Things like that. And so that's how I lost my virginity, was that night. And we did it again and again. I felt ashamed again and again. Shortly after, I was cast in a play, locally, again in town in Des Moines. And it was the best play I've ever been a part of. With the best people I've ever been in a show with, hands down. It was the best experience I've ever had. The main character, the girl who was playing the main character, they actually ended up firing her and calling me and hiring me back. And so I learned the show in like 3 weeks and then went on, and the people were so gracious to me and they were so kind. And I even had to miss my prom. Yes, homeschoolers have proms. And they threw me a prom, a after show cast party prom. They were the sweetest. So I got to wear my prom dress. They were the sweetest. And I brought Brayden. And he wanted to have sex with me after the cast party, and I said no. I said, I'm hurting, I don't feel good. I don't feel good, I'm hurting, I don't feel good. No, no, no. So we got in my car after the party and he forced me to have sex with him. And it hurt, obviously, a lot. And shortly after he broke up with me, and that was that. We never talked about that. We never talked about that moment. We honestly, I think we broke up like 3 days after that even happened. That and to this day I don't even know why he broke up with me. Maybe that was the reason, I don't know. Maybe he felt bad, I don't know. But, you know, it was something that I looked over at the time because I think sometimes, and this is going to get hate, and I know it is. I think sometimes there's a really bad stigma about sexual assault when it comes to conservatives, like more on the political end, where it's, oh, you need to be sure. Are you sure? A lot of women, they'll go out and they'll say that men did this and maybe they didn't and blah blah blah. And so when you're young, you take that the wrong way. I mean, now that I'm older, I understand what people are saying. But when you're young, you're thinking, oh my gosh, no, if I go and I don't have all the details, nobody's going to stick up for me. Or people are going to think I'm lying. And so I never told anybody until like a while later. And that was a lot. It was also not the first time that he had done that, but the first time to such an extent to where I'd repeatedly said no. There had been another time that had happened where I was a little back and forth, but this second time, I was like, I'm in pain, I'm in pain, I'm in pain. No, no, no. Um, and it's hard for me to talk about and think about because allowed myself to be in that situation. Not in the situation. Okay, I'm gonna take that. It's hard for me to talk about and think about because he had given me many warning signs leading up to that moment. Leading up to that moment, I knew what he was capable of. He had hurt me before. And I put all of those warning signs behind me. I, you know, I ignored them and I ignored my red flags because I wanted to be loved by somebody. I wanted someone to love me so bad. Shortly after the breakup, he asked me if I wanted to hook up with him afterwards. And I went back and I did. Um, you know, you want to be loved so bad because you see all of your friends having something that you don't have, or you watch so many movies and they get this ending that you want so bad that you are willing to put yourself through things to have it. And if that's you, I see you and I hear you. But listen to me. The right man will not make you compromise your morals, do things you don't want to do, or force you to do things that you don't want to do or are not ready for. The right man will love you for who you are, will accept you for who you are, and encourage you in who you are. There will be bumps and there will be, mess ups. There will be things that happen. My husband and I aren't perfect. We argue, we fight. But those arguments don't end in a compromising of morals. Those bumps along the way don't make you or force you to do things you don't want to do. And even through our arguments, he loves me through them and we encourage each other through them, and we come back better and stronger. And I think maybe that's even what I was trying to convince myself is, oh, this is, his behavior is a bump in our story. Okay, ladies, like, so after that, like I said, I went back and we, had sex a few more times where he, sexually assaulted me again. I climbed through the window that night. He wouldn't allow me after we broke up to be in his bed. He pushed me to the ground. You know, he forced himself, you know, he forced himself on me. And in the nicest of terms, he gave me permanent damage. Um, I remember saying, "Ow, ow, please stop. This hurts. Something's wrong." And he stopped for a second and he looked at me and he told me, "I'm almost done. Give me a minute." I remember getting into my car and, I was in pain. Something I was just like, I remember saying to myself over and over again, something is wrong, something is wrong, something is wrong. And I was bleeding really bad. Um, I mean, I was bleeding really bad. I'm not going to go into details. This isn't meant to be gross. It's just the reason I'm telling you this is not to gossip. It's not to be graphic. It's not to I'm not giving you LOL story time. I'm telling you, like I said earlier, I hear you. I see you. I was you. I am you in some extent, and I think if you are a young girl and you want to have sex, I'm not telling you, well, don't have sex because you could be sexually assaulted. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying be wary, be cautious, pray, think on it. Butterflies aren't good. When I met my husband, Steven, there were zero butterflies. I felt immediately comfortable and something clicked. Look for a click. Don't look for flutters. Look for a click. To women who, have been sexually assaulted and are living with that every day, I hear you and I see you. And it's not easy. It is not an easy path. It is something that I still hold on to sometimes and I find myself thinking about a lot. It's something that even going into dating my now husband, we talked about a lot. And it was the precursor to a lot of mistakes, which we will most likely get into over the course of this podcast. But it set off something in me. Going back to what Braden originally said, this is what people who love each other do. That was the catalyst for every single sexual mistake I have ever made. And every single, sexual mishap that has happened to me was this is what people who love each other do, because I don't want people or the man I'm with to think that I don't love him. I want him to know that I love him. And if that means having to have sex with him, well then that means having to have sex with him, because I guess there's no other option, because this is what people who love each other do. I must need to make a sacrifice. And after that night with Braden, the night on the floor, I never saw him again. He, tried to contact me. I think we talked or Snapchatted like a couple times. I mean, but that was basically that. That was my final straw after being sexually assaulted by him 3 times. Um, it's easy to feel stupid after things like that. I mean, I felt really dumb after that happened. How could I allow myself to go through that 3 times? And it's because as a young girl who never was spoken to about these things or spoken in depth with or had somebody she felt comfortable talking about these things with, you don't know. And that's where you're at. I mean, I was naive. I thought he would change for me. I thought I was changing in a good way for him. And it's hard in that moment to understand why God would allow you to go through that. I mean, I'm as I sit there, with permanent damage, or I sit there with these permanent memories, these scars of my memories, it's hard to think of a loving God allowing you to go through these things. And I've honestly, over the years, come to terms with the fact that, you know, I was put on this earth to share my stories and to share my testimonies with other women so that they don't feel alone. Because in those times, I felt alone. All my friends were having positive sexual experiences, or if they weren't, I had no idea. All of my friends, um, they knew bits and pieces, but when you're with your friends, you always try to make things seem so much more positive. You're always sitting there like, this might have happened, but all of this great stuff happened, so that your friends don't judge you, because you don't want to hear the truth from your friends, because it's easier to block things out. And I mean, my friends never knew that Braden had a previous, sexual assault history with another girl. Why would I tell them that? Because I don't want them to talk me out of the things I want to do. Does that make sense? And I just felt alone. I felt like, you know, no other girl in my life had gone through something like this. And so if you're hearing me and you're listening to this, and this has been you, or you're considering, having sex, or you have a friend, or maybe you're a mom or a grandma, and you don't even know where to begin, I've been through that. Being peer pressured to lose your virginity, being pressured by the boy that you're with to lose it, being basically gaslit into doing that, being forced to doing things you don't want to do, being assaulted multiple times, and I mean, obviously, sex before marriage wasn't worth it, and it's not worth it in any circumstance. But it's not worth it in the sense of you carry that with you. You carry that shame and guilt with you for the rest of your life. And when it comes to sexual assault, we as women need to be there for each other and more open and honest about these topics, because these things happen. And these things can happen to Christian women too. Sex was like a dirty word in my circles. We didn't talk about this stuff. But I wish that we did, because maybe if I had been more educated, I wouldn't have made some of the decisions, which then wouldn't have led me to be in this situation. And hear me when I say this. If you have been sexually assaulted, that's not your fault. That's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. It's so easy to feel shame and to feel guilt and to carry that with you. It is incredibly easy. And it's incredibly easy to blame yourself. Well, maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done that, or why wasn't I more open to this? But that's not on you. That is not on you. And let me tell you this and follow up with this. God has a place for you. Even when you feel so broken and so alone, and you feel like you've made decisions you can't come back from, you can come back from those. And I am living proof. This only happened when I was 18 years old, guys. I'm only 23, and now I am married and I have a child, and we're about to move into our first home. God can pull you out of that, and He can bring you back from that. But you have to reflect on yourself, and you have to take the step. It's almost like God is standing at the door. Step into it. And moms and grandmas alike, or guardians or whatever, encourage these conversations with your girls. It's an uncomfortable combo, and and maybe they don't want to have it. Therapy is great, or get them involved with a great youth group that actually has these conversations and explains these things. And I hope when you listen to this, you don't take away that I'm gossiping. I hope you don't take away that, oh my goodness, this is so crude or crass or inappropriate. Because that's the problem. And that's why a lot of young women find themselves in these situations. And that's why a lot of young women feel like they can't talk to other women about these, because you treat them like dirt when they ask you. Or you treat them like, oh, we can't talk about that. Have these conversations. If you are, struggling with this, find an older woman that you can confide in, whether that's your mom or maybe your friend's mom. Talk to other women. because you would be surprised how many other women have made decisions just like the one you're thinking about, just like the one you've already done. And sexual assault happens a lot more than you think, and it is real. But just as that is real, the recovery and God's grace and love and mercy is also just as real. Accept that and take that and run with it. I hope this helps. I hope this helped someone, the girl out there struggling, or a mom or anybody struggling to just even open the conversation. Um, I thank you for taking the time to listen. I really appreciate it. Make sure, to stay tuned for episode 3. And, I just hope that this can be a space where we can have these kinds of conversations and you can get the kind of information and community that you need. Thank you for listening to episode 2 of Let's Talk. Let's talk about sexual assault. You can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, X, and Instagram. Let's Talk Podcast. Thank you guys.